Hello everybody, and welcome to Doing Stuff and Things. On today's episode, I'm going to get into gear. I'm going to talk about some of the stuff you're going to need to do some of the amazing things there are to do on this island or any of the tropical islands that you might find yourself on. So, since I realize there's a wide variety and different price ranges for all this stuff, I'm just going to talk about the basics to kind of let you know what I use to really make my experiences way more richer, more comfortable, and more fun. So check it out. Let's talk about some gear that you're going to need in Hawaii. One of the most common pieces of gear that people need in Hawaii is a boogie board. Now, the difference between boogie boarding and bodyboarding is how you ride. If you're going to just catch the whitewater and ride straight into the beach, that's boogie boarding. Bodyboarding, you're actually going to catch the face of the wave and ride sideways with it like that. Difference in boards are, you're going to buy boogie boards at somewhere like Costco or any tourist shop. And they are just basically pieces of styrofoam for between 20 and 50 bucks. And they will crease. Crease means the board bends. When the board bends, the surface, the bottom, gets creased, which makes maneuverability next to, well, maybe not next to impossible, but very difficult. This is a proper body board. Now the one I got is big, especially big, so that you can actually drop knee ride it, which means you get down on one knee. And I like this board because it's what's called a triple stringer. Now in a bodyboard proper, you're going to have what's called a stringer, which is a core. It's a round piece of, I think, plastic. This one has three, here, here, and here, and that prevents the board from creasing. Also, very important if you're going to get into bodyboarding is you need swim fins. Bodyboard swim fins are very specific. They're short and they're stubby. They're designed for bursts of speed rather than prolonged, like cruising. So, swim fins can run anywhere from 40 bucks to, these were 90. This is a good brand and they float. So that's something to consider when you're getting your fins. Having them float is very nice. Now, just like everything, there's upgrades and there's ranges. This board was about $250, $300. They go way high. But if you're going to get a proper bodyboard, you're going to spend triple digits guaranteed. The shape, the design, so many different types. Best thing to do is just ask the people at the board shop what they recommend for a beginner just starting out. Gear that you're going to need is a rash guard. It's just a swim shirt that protects your tummy. And in this case, I wear this for both bodyboarding and snorkeling and spearfishing. So when I get bumped up against the reef, it gives me just a little bit of leeway before I lose skin. Very important to have. Now, as far as just getting a really cheap board, because you're just going to be here on vacation and you only intend to do boogie boarding, that's fine. Just get a cheap one. But if you're moving here and you're really looking to get into bodyboarding, definitely spend the money and get a good one. For the beach, check this out. Put the stakes in the corners, maybe a couple sandbags, and you're ready to go. But to put it back together again, Gear tip for life in Hawaii. You're really going to want to make sure you have one of these nets. Not necessarily for catching minnows, but for catching geckos inside the house. Now geckos are friendly and we like them. They eat bugs, but at the same time they make really big poops for how small of a lizard they are. In fact, their poop looks a lot like mouse poop. So as much as I like them, I gotta get him out of the house because they just poop on everything. So we're gonna take him somewhere that he'll have lots to eat and more than likely find his way back in the house. So with water gear, obviously you need a snorkel. Now I recommend getting a nicer snorkel because the ones you get at Walmart, Long's, or any cheap one, they really have a tendency to leak a lot, and you don't want a leaky snorkel. There's a lot of places you can rent them too. I recommend Kapa'a Dive Shop. Those folks are really nice, really good, and they'll outfit you with what you need. I've noticed that it's better to have a nice snorkel so you really don't have to worry about it leaking on you and constantly filling up with water, because that can ruin your trip and your dive. Now, swim fins also very important, and there's a couple different kinds. Like we saw with the bodyboarding fins, they're small little stubby ones. You can use them for prolonged swimming, but they're really designed for short bursts. Your typical snorkel fin is like a mid-range. It's not quite stubby, but it's not very long. This is a good cruiser, and they'll get you around. But what I prefer and love are the big daddies. This particular one is not a high-end fin. I think it's 80 bucks for a set of these. You don't need a little booty like some of the nicer ones require a water sock to get in and then they strap on. These ones you just slip in, and I tell you what, you will notice a huge difference if you're using big fins. These things have power. Gloves. I always dive with gloves. Even if I'm just cruising around snorkeling, I'm always wearing gloves. They can be simple little gardener's gloves with the little rubber palm and the stretchy back. These are really cheap too. You can get them for $5 for a pack of 3. A lot of different varieties. Really inexpensive. But let me tell you, I found gloves to be extremely beneficial. Just because if you have to grab the rock for any reason, these will protect your hands. Fishing, spearfishing. A lot of people are interested in spearfishing. I love it. It's actually one of my favorite things to do because it's snorkeling, but with a purpose. And this is a whole world of stuff to learn. But if you're just new to underwater fishing, spearfishing style, the gun might be the next step. And really what is one of the most popular methods of spearfishing is the Hawaiian sling, the 3-prong. 3-prong spear gets its name because of the 3 prongs. And just like everything, they come in a wide variety of price ranges. This one here was like 40 bucks, but they go all the way up to $300, $400, $500, $800. Really nice ones. But if you just want to get into it to try to experiment and see what it's like, these kind are a really good introduction into 3-prong and Hawaiian sling spearfishing. You can get them at Walmart and all kinds of other places. Again, Kapa'a Dive Shop has everything you need. The reason I like them is because they'll also tell you what you don't need. General rule of thumb with spears, the longer the better, because the way these things work is similar to a slingshot, all right? It's the same mechanics. You got the rubber band on one end, and you got the business end at the other end. I've seen several different methods for holding the spear. So here's the basic way for how to use the 3-prong. You loop the rubber band around your thumb. Give it a little twist. Just a little twist like that, you see? So the rubber band wraps around the shaft. And you're swimming along. You see your fish. You just point and shoot. So one of the reasons that longer is better with a spear is because your effective kill range is really only as long as the spear. So with a 3-prong, I'm really not going to be shooting stuff as far out there as that went and stuck in the ground, because when it's way out there, it's probably just going to hit the fish and the fish is going to scat. You want it to go wham, hit the fish and hold it. You want your fish to be real close, just off the tip of the spear. But 3-prong, aka Hawaiian sling, it's a lot of fun. I love it. You can pick your target and it's always a good trip. It's one of the reasons I love spearfishing so much, is because even if I don't shoot a fish, I always see something neat and something wonderful. I always enjoy the trip. Oh, I guess the same thing can be said for hunting. I feel the same way. When you're up in the mountains cruising around, even if you don't take a shot, it's still a gorgeous area to be in. Now, another option outside of a rash guard is an actual wetsuit top. Again, many different price ranges, types, thicknesses. Personally, I don't get very cold in the ocean, and so I've generally been pretty good with a rash guard. But lately I've been doing more and more with the wetsuit top because it has a hood. And if you have a bald head like mine, the head's going to get sunburned unless you would just slather it in sunscreen. The hood means I don't need sunscreen on the top of my head. Also, a lot of them have a little bit of a pad right there. That's for spear fishing with a proper spear, because when you pull the rubber bands back to load the gun, it's a lot of pressure on your chest and it will bruise you. A helpful tip for that, to avoid the bruising, is to put a broken slipper, a flip-flop, on your chest, just in case you are interested in getting into spearfishing. Let me show you how the typical gun loads. You gotta pull the rubber bands back and that loads, that cocks the gun. These get pulled back to here. And in order to pull these back, put it on your chest and pull them back. And that is tight. Always end up with a big bruise right on my chest. So, one old busted slipper, put inside it so it sits on my chest like that. That way I can pull it back with this here, and that will protect your chest and help avoid getting some of those nasty bruises. But the gun fishing is a little advanced. For people just getting in to spearfishing, the way to go is the Hawaiian sling. Now guys, obviously you need a pair of shorts. Personally, it's gotta be board shorts, knee length. I don't know what is up with this new fad of all these way above the knee shorts. They look like 70s running shorts. They're awful. Board shorts. You need a pair of board shorts. And again, you can get them from $10 to $100. For snorkeling and spearfishing and just being in the water with goggles, I have to have shorts with pockets. Double-sided cargo pockets. And these are harder to find than you might think. I also keep a little bag in one of my pockets, because when I'm snorkeling around, if I find a beautiful or a neat shell or something old that's washed up, I'm gonna put it in my pocket to save for my treasures collection. Now, one really fun thing to do, but also really scary, is night diving. When you're snorkeling at night, there's a lot of other stuff you're gonna see that you won't see during the daytime. For example, lobsters are primarily nocturnal. So when you're swimming around at night, you'll actually see them crawling around versus just stumbling upon them in their caves during the day. So for night diving, I always keep 2 lights just in case the battery fries out on one of them. I have a headlamp that sits right on top of my snorkel, like this. It sits right on top. I can aim it this way or that way. Multiple different settings, just looking around. A little bit dimmer to save the light. Distress. The nice thing about having the headlamp on is it's always facing everywhere you're looking. But I also keep this, my primary light, on my wrist. Also multiple settings. Now, keep this on my wrist so that when I have to hold the rocks, I can let it go. It just dangles there. Hold the rock, reach in the cave, grab the lobster or octopus or whatever I'm after. But I also always have the headlamp on so that I still have light wherever I'm looking. Now, these waterproof dive lights are fairly inexpensive. I got them off Amazon. I think it was like 40 bucks or something like that. It was very inexpensive, but always have 2. because you don't want to be out in that inky black water with no light. Now that's scary. And I've got some videos on night diving. Check out the channel. I even went fishing with just a knife one day. And one of the last pieces of equipment you're going to need for spearfishing is a buoy. Now this here is the lifeguard variety buoy. It's really heavy duty, and it serves a couple different purposes. One, it alerts boats to know where you are, that you're within a 30 or 40 foot diameter of this flag. The flag sits atop the buoy, and as you pull it along, you're swimming with a line tied to your buoy, and it just sits right on top and alerts all the boats and everything around that there's a diver in the area and they're supposed to avoid you. And on the cord that's tied to the buoy, you have a weight or a claw, something, so that when you get to a reef, to an area that you want to fish, you just drop it down, it holds the bottom, the buoy sits still, and then you fish around it. Catch your fish, or you just decide to move, grab the string and swim away. The other nice thing about the buoy is if you get caught in a random current and you start getting swept out somewhere that you can't get back from, this gives you something to hold on to. And that's like a worst case scenario. The third benefit to the buoy is you have your fish stringer tied to your buoy, so that when you shoot a fish, you put it on your stringer, and then the buoy is trailing 30, 40 feet away from you. And if there's any sharks in the neighborhood that want a piece of your catch, they're not coming up to your body so much as they're going to your buoy. Countless stories I've heard from other spear fishermen where they're swimming along, pulling their buoy, all of a sudden the buoy starts tugging. They turn around and they look, and there's a bunch of hammerheads, Galapagos, and all kinds of other sharks feeding on the dead fish hanging off the buoy. Dive knife. Even when I'm just snorkeling, I always have a knife strapped to my leg. Well, almost always, when I always remember. These can, just like everything, range in price. I think this one here was 30 bucks. I've used this knife to cut fishing line off turtles. I've used this knife to open coconuts. I've used this knife to do all kinds of stuff. So I always have a knife just strapped to my leg, even when I'm just out snorkeling around. So that's water. Now let's talk about the jungle in Kauai. I almost always have a walking stick. Now, I customize this one myself because if I'm gonna have something, I might as well make it look neat. Walking sticks are important because it gives you a third point of contact with the ground. And a lot of the ground is slippery and dicey around here. So this gives you something to lean on if you start going this way or this way. River crossings, mud. I've even used these to get fruit down off trees that I couldn't reach. So a walking stick. Now, footwear. There's a wide variety of footwear for hiking. So you want something that can get wet and drain. So you really want an amphibious shoe. A lot of different varieties. I used to wear Tevas a lot, but what I've discovered in the last year is the Vibram 5-finger. I know they look funny, but let me tell you, these are the most superior jungle hiking shoe that I've ever worn. These have a really aggressive tread, fairly hard sole, but they also have the independent toes, and they're really lightweight, so you get amazingly good traction. Sometimes when you're climbing up rivers and streams, you have to boulder a little bit. Put your toe on that boulder and it gives you good traction. Get right up it. These things are just beasts in the jungle. Strongly recommend them. So yeah, doing stuff in Hawaii, a little bit of gear involved, but there's a little gear involved for doing stuff anywhere. See you next time.